Good morning, everyone. This is Isabel Tierney, and I'm the founder of the Feel Good Life methodology, which is a methodology that, put in simple words, helps you stress less in your life and thrive more. And I imagine we all want to thrive more in our lives. And this is one of the reasons that I do these Facebook Lives. Good morning, Mary. I do these Facebook Lives to actually indeed teach us how to stress less and thrive more in our lives. And so I'm really excited about the topic today. And I'm going to wait just a couple of minutes as people coming in. Philip Nicholas is watching. Yay! This makes me really, really happy. And how is everybody after the Christmas season? How has the week been for you? I was telling Philip and the rest of the team that I've just been feeling like I want quiet and stillness this week. It's a strange week today. It's like there's still another holiday coming of New Year's, but we're done with Christmas and we're done with Thanksgiving, and it's kind of like an in-between place. Good morning, Maureen. So good to see you. And as people start coming in, I want to share about the behind the scenes about creating this live. So the context is that I think it was last week, I wrote a post that said, how can I support you, right? Like, is there any way that I can support you? And what I was really surprised to discover, good morning, Cindy. What I was really surprised is that all the questions of support were about friendships. How do I find friends? I'm struggling with retaining my friends, with making new friends as I'm changing. And so then in last week's live, in this community, in your community, at the end of the live that we did on self-care, which I loved, I asked the questions, well, if I were to do a Facebook Live on friendship, does that interest you? And every single person on the live and on the replay said, yes. Good morning, Alex. And so I then endeavored to prepare for this live, and it was so fascinating to watch how up until last night, I really did not know how I was going to approach the subject. Like, the subject felt so big and it felt so complicated. And I really was like, well, how do I provide value to my community by bringing up this topic? And so I even wrote on Slack, I wrote my facilitators last night, my team, and just said, help. And Joni Hibden ended up calling me, and Inga left some messages. So what I've discovered as I have sat down and really taken the time, good morning, Mika, really taken the time to explore this concept of friendship, is that friendships are integral to our experience of living a green zone life, a life where we thrive, at least for most of us, right? There's going to be some of us who listen in who don't actually need a lot of friendships. So just know that I'm talking to those of us who really are people who need friendships, whether it's one really close one or many, many, right? We can be different like that. But for most of us generally, having healthy friendships. Good morning, Carrie. I'm hoping that you're able to come on before you have to have that difficult conversation. So what I'm speaking to is those of us who really value friendships and understand their importance in living a green zone life. And interestingly, we always talk about the 4 life areas in which we can improve so that we can lead a better green zone life. And we talk about health and relationships and career and finances and spirituality. But I realized that in the 5 years I've been teaching this specific methodology, I have not really brought up friendships when I've spoken about relationships. I've spoken about family and I've spoken about partnership. Good morning, Joanne. I love that. You love my consistency, Nika. That is a new thing I'm doing. I am like, no matter what, or I get somebody to replace me like Deidre, but it's really important to me. Good morning, Matt. So I didn't realize that I really actually had not addressed the concept of friendship in the relationship life area. So I'm going to do my best this morning to cover, it's probably going to be a pretty meta covering of friendship, but hopefully you're still going to get something from this live. And then what we can choose to do as a community is we can choose to have me do lives that dive deeper into certain ones of us. So when something that I'm speaking about is really resonating with you and you want me to go deeper, why don't we do a thing? Do hashtag go deeper. All right, so you got it? Can you do thumbs up that you will do hashtag go deeper? And I'll just then take that subtopic and speak about it in another live. I am always looking for topics that help us stress less and thrive more. And so it really helps me out when you let me know. Good morning, J. Marie. So let's get started on the topic of friendships. You know, I was going to write the gift and curse of friendships, and that felt a little harsh, but really, I ended up calling this live the gift and difficulties of relationships. So in this live, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover 5 points. So why are friendships so important? Number 2, why is it so hard? Like friendships can be really hard. They strike a lot of nerves. So we're going to talk about why friendships are so rich but so hard as well. We're going to cover how to make friends because most of you spoke about the difficulty of making friends, especially as we get older. We're going to talk about how to maintain friendships. And then the final point is we're going to talk about friendship breakups. So stay with me for the whole thing, or if not, listen to the replay. That way we'll get to address all of them. So first of all, and we don't need to go into this for a very long time, why are friendships so key? So I was doing some research about this, and friendships have been consistently proven to physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually have you feel more good, right? They are scientifically proven, it's a scientifically proven habit, i.e. to have friendship, that is going to keep you healthy in all kinds of ways. And we know that, right? We know the periods of our life where we've had really good friendships, especially when we first fall in love. You know, friendships have their honeymoon cycle too. And it just feels so good. And so scientifically know that this is one of the greatest feel-good habits you could practice to live in the green zone, that is to develop and maintain healthy friendships, which is really what this live is about. And you can do way more scientific research on this. It's pretty amazing, especially in old age, how important it is to have. And you know, what's interesting is the research. One of the things that really struck me about the research is that they talk about adolescence and old age, the 2 most important times where friendships are really, really crucial to our well-being. And fascinatingly, I think they're 2 of our more difficult times. They can be 2 of our more difficult times. So, number 1. Number 2, why are they so hard? And when I really sat with that, if you think about friendships, friendships are literally one of the most intimate, important part of your life, right? Like to have friends that you're intimate with, that you love, that love you, that you have to navigate when it gets turbulent, when it's difficult. It requires so many skills to have friendships. It builds so many skills to have friendships. And at least in my world, and of course you can always share in your world what it means to you. In my world, my friends, especially my close ones, often know more about me than even Brian or my kids do, because sometimes I can say to some of my best friends things that bother me about Brian or the kids, or something that might feel very vulnerable to share, and getting the support and the compassion and the understanding of a friend who's not in the middle of a family situation or partner situation is so important. Like, you know, when Brian and I were going through our difficulties in our divorce and post-divorce, I don't know what I would have done without friends. I have some friends that spend so many hours on the phone with me, listening to me. Like, who else does that? So let me know, is that a fit for you, that friends can be really important to you. And that's what makes it so hard, is that they really touch the core of our intimacy and our vulnerability. And so when things are going well with friendships, we get enriched, we feel better, all the things that are scientifically proven. But when things aren't going well, when we have heartbreak, when we have disappointment, when we have misunderstandings, it is so heavy. It can be so heavy in our hearts. And friendships really are this incredible mirror of our capacity to be intimate. I'm going to say that again. Friendships are an incredible mirror of our capacity to be intimate. So the more you learn to be a skillful friend, the more you're going to learn to bring that skill everywhere else in your life. So this is why I'm so excited about this live and about really diving into this topic. Another thing that I want to say about why it's so hard about friendships is like they trigger a basic survival mechanism, right? And that mechanism is the mechanism to belong, the need to belong. The need to belong is literally the most powerful need that we have as human beings, right? Apart, of course, from basic needs like food and shelter. So I'm talking about emotional need. So friendships really illuminate that need to belong and can really either make it totally great, like, yes, I belong, I have a best friend, I'm part of a group of friends, or if you're kicked out of a group, or you have a friend that breaks out with you, or you don't know how to enter groups, all your freaking basic need of belonging get triggered. And then each and every one of us has different ways that we deal with that wounding, right? Some of us go into the flight response, like, fuck it. I don't want friends, right? I don't need this friend. I don't need this group. It's like, who's that? Who has more the flight response? Like you just leave, like you just abandon the friendship. And then some of you have the fight response, and that's usually more me. Like, I'm going to try to fix and repair this relationship and belong to this group. Like, I'm going to do everything that I can to try to stay in this group, because for me, right, and for many of us, being kicked out or not being part of a herd is actually really dangerous. And so all our shit shows up. And so I really want to invite you, if we're one of those people who maybe gives yourself a little bit of a hard time about how vulnerable you are with friendships, or the ways you've comported yourself in certain friendships or in groups, please give yourself a break. Like, this has triggered an old evolutionary response that is meant to keep you safe, that is meant to make you go into fight, flight, or freeze if you suddenly feel that that need to belong is not being met and is actually threatened. Does that make sense? Can you do a thumbs up if that makes sense? And the final piece, I think that I was saying a little bit of it before, is that it's hard because it requires so many skills. It requires a skill to be able to have difficult conversations. It requires a skill to set context with our friends, which we're going to talk about. It requires the skill about being able to manage heartbreak when it happens. It requires the skill of knowing your values and knowing what is important to you and when it is that you should let go of a friend because their values consistently don't match yours. So Alex says, me, yes, I love the concept to be skillful and loyal friend. Exactly. I withdraw and wait and see if the problem will blow over. How interesting, Adrienne, right? So it's almost like the freeze response. That's more the freeze response, right? That we just wait until the thing is done. So let's talk about how do we make friends. And I was thinking about life cycles, and I was thinking about if we were to break our life up into childhood, adulthood, and old age, we know that in childhood and young adulthood, we are surrounded by people. So the process of finding friends is actually not so difficult. Now, the process of having friends and maintaining friends, oh my goodness gracious. Childhood, it's usually pretty freaking innocent. If you're lucky, how many of you had a bestie in your childhood that you can still remember? You can still remember what it felt like to have her or him as your best friend, right? Me, if you had a best friend. And, relatively easy to not only find but maintain friends, and it's usually like one or a few as children. And then middle school and high school come. And then, right, what happens in each person developmentally is that we suddenly now need to have a need to belong, right? That doesn't show up in terms of external factors beyond mom and dad, but with friends until middle and high school. So the need to belong then often overrides loyalty that you or your friend might have had towards each other. Because belonging in the group as a teenager is very, very important. You have to know that means that you are good enough. So your sense of worthiness shows up. Carrie remembers her best friend from 40 years later. I love that. Although there's conflict now, we're going to talk about that. Still friends, says Alex. Amazing. Hold on. What does Nika said? Not yet. Any single friend reached out to talk it through and repairs. It seems like I'm the one who sees more value. We're going to talk about that, Nika, in a minute. It's context, right, of friendships. So to me, middle school and high school are the times where we often get our first heartbreak. Who got their first heartbreak in middle school or high school? You know, you have the friend that dumps you either for a boy or dumps you for the more popular group or whatever it is. And it's so painful because nobody in middle school or high school has the skill to deal with what it takes to be a good friend, right? You have raging hormones, you have this new need to belong and to be like others, and now, I mean, I can't even imagine with social media what it is that people, like kids, have to deal with in terms of friendships. It sounds so difficult and so brutal. And then there's always some of us, even in childhood and young adulthood, that always have struggled to make friends. You know, for me, it's very sad, but when I finally became friends with a popular group in my town in Switzerland, I was 12. I had just been the only one in my whole town who had braces. And then my braces were taken out. I turned 12. I suddenly became a little bit less, I don't know, gangly or whatever it was. And then I became pretty. And then suddenly the popular group wanted to be friends with me. So I learned a whole thing about why we need to, what do we need to do to belong to the popular group, which I really, really, really wanted. So I don't know if any of you have had that. I don't like that my hair does this thing. Joanne says, my best friend since 6th grade broke up with me 6 years ago because of my anger. Oh, breakups are so painful. They're so painful. So, right, so we're talking about childhood, early adulthood, and then as adults, you know, if we call college adulthood and then work and then raising a family, again, to find friends is easy enough. You know, I was lucky enough to have a lot of friends in college, a lot of friends. I moved to a neighborhood raising my children that had a lot of friends, but even seeing my daughter Galen, you know, we have to talk about COVID and friendships, whether it's in this live or another live. She's had 2 children in the last 2.5 years and has no community because of COVID and because she works. And so I can't even imagine having raised my kids without community. We lived in a cul-de-sac where everybody had the same age kids. And so again, to make friends and to find friends, those are easier times. Where I find it harder is if you're moving, if during COVID, and also as we get older, because we don't have as many circles unless we intentionally go to churches. We can do spiritual groups. You know, it can be online for many of us. Most of my friendships are online because I moved. As we get older, when they say it's the most important time to have friendships, it's actually much harder. So has anybody moved and struggled with have friendships? Who's listening to the live or the replay? Have any of you had your friendships impacted by COVID? And what was the other one? Hold on, I have it all written down. I forget what the other one was. Oh, the old age, right? That is just, we're not surrounded by as many people as we were in college, and I don't think I understood. And so for those of you who find themselves in that time where you have no more young kids, maybe work is on Zoom, really what my solution is for you, it's a really, really simple one, and it just goes with a formula. And that formula is intention plus attention equals manifestation. And it's just remembered as I am. It's one of my greatest, I love formulas. I love simplifying difficult concepts. So we can talk about this. Maybe we can do a separate live. Like if you have an intention, get clear about your intention, about how many friends, what kind of friends you want to have. Because if you think about friends, there are different circles of intimacy, right? You have the closest intimate friends, right? The best friends. And then there's the next level, which might be the convenient friends, Joni was calling them. You know, they're at work or they're in your neighborhood. And then you have acquaintances. So like, what do you want? Get clear about what levels or level of friendship you want. And then you have, so that's intention plus attention. What are you going to do? Like what attention, what actions are you going to do to foster your intention? And so I imagine in this group, we can give all kinds of advice. You know, you can join church, there are other communities, you can play in the band, you can do dancing lessons. You know, you can join groups online, you can do meetups. So I don't think that I would teach you anything new if I spent a lot of time on that, but please share in this group, what are the ways as you've gone older that you have found ways to create friendships when it's harder to find them. Got it? Now let's talk about the maintaining of friendships, right? So we've talked about why it's important to have friends. We have talked about why it's hard, why, like it's so deep. The concept of friendships is so deep. We've talked about how to find and create friendships. So now let's talk about the maintenance of friendships. Because if you think about friendships, they're no different than our beloved or partner relationships, because they have a honeymoon period and you are completely attuned to that person, right? And what I have found in my life is those that I fall deeply and madly in love with that become best friends, often for life, completely accidental. Like one of my best friends, Anne, we were building our house and in Boston, and she was outside her house, building her house, right? It was a new development. And I will never forget that she went out and she had kids that were, I don't know, 8, 10, 12. And she was like giving them Cheetos in the car just to keep them busy so that she could go into her house. And I just remember her, loving her from the beginning, because I was a type of parent that just really appreciated not always being perfect and only giving apples and carrots and this and that. And so most of my really deep friendships have been accidental. And so the maintaining of them, right? So there's that honeymoon period. And then there is the relationship itself, and it's when fissures and little hurts and little wounds can start building, right? Like, well, she didn't call me back, or she forgot my birthday, or he wasn't very kind to me in front of my friend group. Like, what are some of the little ways you start noticing that a friend starts entering like this phase where little core wounds hurt? Now, if you have the skill and if you have the context, you can decide at which point you're going to bring this up to your friend. And at which point do you want to just be like, you know what? That's my trigger. I'm going to work on that on my own. So what type are you more? Do you have a tendency more to actually be the type that always wants to talk about things the minute they happen? Or are you the type more to say, I'm going to work it out. I don't need to talk about it. And so this is something, a skill in maintaining a friendship that I have found really important. And as always, you guys can decide what's important to you. I'm just giving you the ways that have worked for me and that I've heard of others, but you get to choose what you want. You're grown-ups. I said the context. All my friendships have the context that, and this is really important, if there's anything that I notice that is leading me to want to pull away from you, I will come to you and speak to you about it. Got it? So if there's anything, it's called like I'm wanting to withhold from you. Like I don't want to spend as much time with you. I'm noticing I'm a little more guarded with you. Like Any way that I notice that I'm starting to withhold from my friend, or my friend is noticing he or she is withholding from me, and this is, of course, for my most intimate friends, that first circle, okay? We have a context, an explicit context that we are going to talk about with each other. What do you imagine that helps, right? For some of you, you might be like, wow, that's way too much work. And I don't know anybody who would be willing to do that. Like, I don't know what shows up for you when I say that. But those, just like I get to choose the kind of clients I want to work with, I get to choose, thankfully, these days, what kind of friendships I want to have. And so when I was asking you, what's your intention? What kind of friendship do you want to have? Do you want to have more superficial friendships? Do you want to be able to talk about the stuff that happens within the friendship and not just talk about your partner or this friend or that friend or work? Do you have the courage and the skill, because it takes courage and skill, to talk about the friendship itself? Okay, write this. Will you write, yes, I have the courage and the skill and the desire to talk about what's happening within the friendship? Or if you say no, it's like, no, I'm not interested in that. That is not what I want a friend for. Will you write yes, no? I want to know. For me, everything in life is a relational, everything in life is a fodder for growth, right? A fodder for expansion, a fodder for becoming a more green zone human being. And so friendships are such rich ground to practice relationship and intimacy and difficult conversation. Yes, I have the desire. No, I do not have the skill. Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, great. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't surprise me with this group, right? That those of you watching, those of you replay, is you are the type of people where you want green zone thriving relationships, and you are aware that you have to know yourself and you have to be willing to know another in order to have that. By context, do you mean spoken agreement? Yeah, thank you. Let me answer. Yes, I have the courage, skill, and desire. I'm over having a lot of friends and superficial, says Kara. Real and raw, it's where it's at for me. I love that. I love that. Well, I don't love that in that, like, if that's not your preference for somebody who's listening, like, there's no judgment. That, what Kara says, resonates with me. For me, the number of friends, right? And that's what Facebook is so freaking good about, because it hits our need to be loved, to be seen, to be valued, to be recognized. And it's like, I've got 20 friends, I've got 30 people who like that. I mean, I'm not even going to get into Facebook right now. That is not the topic, but talk about friends and what that triggers in us, the whole concept of Facebook. Right? Hashtag go deeper if you want me to focus on Facebook and what that triggers in all of us. So, okay. So what was I talking about? Okay. Maintaining relationships. So the gift and curse of expectations, and what we're talking about, implicit and explicit rules, really context. So we have an explicit, meaning spoken out loud context with my best friends, that if something leads us to withhold from each other, we will speak about it. And that obviously prevents it happening and building and building and building and building, which I'm sure all of us have experienced, that you have no clue that a friend is matter and matter and matter and matter, and then they suddenly freaking leave your life. And you're like, what happened? And you can't even understand because they have never shared. And I have this crazy childhood-driven obsession because I experienced so much abandonment. That's why I think I have such explicit rules about it. Whether that fits for you or not, you get to decide, like, please let me know if I've done something to hurt you or to impact you or to trigger you, because then you give me the chance to explore, like, what am I responsible for? Did I mean to do it? Did I unconsciously mean to do it? Do I need to repair? What do you need? But if you don't tell me, and this is what happens in many friendships who don't have explicit contexts, right? Spoken out loud expectations, then the friendships can just fall apart. Same thing as an intimate relationship with a partner. So I can see that most of you really want that. So what are the explicit rules you want to set in your friendship? And at which point do you talk about it? That's something to decide. Because the implicit ones, so let's say you become friends with me, but you don't know that I have that expectation that you let me know if you're mad at me. Like, how are you going to meet my need? And how am I going to meet your need? Because I don't know what your expectations are about what's going to make you feel safe, what's going to make you want to maintain this relationship even when things are hard, right? So it is really important. I find that implicit assumptions are really what hurt the relationship, because we often have these expectations of friends that they have no clue. So how the hell can they meet them if they don't have them? Carrie, this is exactly what's been going on with my friend. She's upset about something and just ignored me for the last 5 months. Yeah, it's so let's talk about breakup just for a moment. I'll go deeper into it in a few minutes. Okay, good. I'm looking at time. Friend breakups, like the ghosting, right? I didn't call it ghosting, right? When it happened to me, I literally, just like we all, many of us remember our best friends when we were kids. Do you remember the heartbreaks just as clearly? Like two, I have two. One was a friend that I went to high school with, and we stayed friends in college. And then she and I were on a trip to Scotland after college for 3 weeks. And after that trip, she literally never spoke to me again. Now, understand, she was a best friend. And I have tried through the years, to see, can we reconnect? Is there something that I did that upset you? The worst one was the last time I tried to reach out to her. It was like 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And I called her and she answered. And she was like, hi. And I'm like, hi. And she said, I'm watching the Olympics right now. Can I call you back? And I was like, great, of course. So however long, 2 Olympics ago, hung up. Guess what? She never called me back. It was just her way of just not dealing with me. Whew. Yeah. So those relate. So, and then there's another one. She was a mother friend, right? We were good friends because we were mothers of children who were friends with each other. And she literally left a vacation one day and just left and never came back. And I tried because, like, for me, if you don't repair, it's really, really painful to my heart. Again, right? You got to look at yourself, just like I'm sharing with you. What are your own childhood wounds that drive your friendships now? And are those wounds, is anybody else responsible for healing those wounds? Are you responsible for healing those wounds? Right? These are really important questions, because I can say to you, hey, I have a wound of not being told that I've done something wrong, and the person either getting mad at me or abandoning me. And that's like one of my core wounds. And so I've set up this system that I want to see if it works for you, that says, hey, if something comes up for you that makes you start wanting to pull away from me, will you please share it? But do you see the way I just phrased that? I didn't make it a demand on the friend. I know it's one of my core wounds to be left because I've done something that I don't know what I've done. And the person just leaves without trying to explain. And so, what are some of your childhood wounds? Will you please write that here in the thread that you now see, especially now that we talk about it more deeply, impact the way you show up as a friend and what your expectations are as a friend. You know, another one of the maintaining friendship skills is being clear about what your expectations are about reaching out. I find that for me, that's one of the most difficult things. And I've heard this again and again and again and again. Maureen says, in 7th grade, my friend wrote me and told me I was not a best friend kind of person. Unfortunately, the teacher got the note and read it out loud in class. Oh my God, Maureen. Those are the kinds of events, right, that just leave such a stamp on our psyche. Because remember when I was talking about the need to belong, it's a survival need, and you literally got kicked out of the herd in that moment. Ooh, Nika, abandonment triggers. Friends are leaving. Yep, we are responsible. Yeah, I love that. Carrie, isn't the other person responsible for their communication? If you don't know what you did and they don't tell you, how can you be responsible? Yeah, I know. But they might not have the thing about getting our friends' worlds and not making assumptions is they might have different values, right? For them, and I find this with men to be more true, they don't need to nor want to analyze every moment that they get hurt or they get triggered. You triggered them, you hurt them. They just fucking want to, excuse me, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on Facebook. They just freaking want to just get over it. And like high five each other. And I'm exaggerating, of course. I'm globalizing, but this is also true of some women. There's some people who don't want to explore every aspect of relationship. And this is the part too, it's like I was saying a little while ago. We get to decide, like I get to decide, like, oh, I'm noticing I'm withholding a little bit from this friend, right? From this best friend. I first look inside. Always, before you approach the friend, you first look at yourself. Is there something like, oh, what happened? Oh, I got triggered because of this thing. Well, do I need to share this? Or is this something that's mine that I can just heal myself? So sometimes that will happen. But most often for me, I prefer to share it like, hey, I noticed this triggered me. I just wanted to let you know there's nothing you need to do about it. Or I noticed this thing triggered me. And could you please tell me more about why you said what you said or why you did what you did? So do you see how many choices you've got within the context of friendship? There's so much you can work with. And let me just look, the difficult conversation, right? So how many of you are willing to have difficult conversations? And again, do you have friendships where that is as highly valued as it is for you? Thank God, my closest circle of intimacy and even the circle beyond it is trained and values difficult conversations. But the trick about difficult conversations, and if you want me to do a live on how to have a difficult conversation, hashtag go deeper, right? Because I won't have time to go into it. It could be a class for 6 months about how to have difficult conversations. But if you want me to do a conversation on that, a live on that, I will do that. But so are you willing to have a difficult conversation? And in this work, we talk about false good habits and feel good habits. False good habits immediately feel good, but then have negative consequences. And feel good habits are often more difficult to do at first, but always have positive consequences. So not having the difficult conversation is a great false good habit, right? Whew, I'm not going to bring this thing up. I'm just going to let it lie. Not going to say anything. False good, because guess what? Whether it's that one time where your friend triggered you or it's been piling up, it's going to impact the intimacy of your friendship, the quality of your friendship. So learning to have difficult conversations, be responsible, speaking as the I, checking in, making sure everybody gets each other's words, like all the things we can talk about in another live, is crucial. It is the best feel-good habit you can have if you have a value around that kind of intimacy with your friendships. So who feels, it's a little bit of the same question, but I'll be more precise. Who feels skillful about having difficult conversations with a friend? I want to know. I have the not saying anything down pat. Yeah, well, why don't you say, you know what, Maureen, will you write up until now? Up until now. Everything we're talking about today, that the patterns you've been doing with friendships, always remember to add up until now. It's why I do these lives, because I want to offer you a different choice than who you've been up until now. So Maureen, I have the not saying anything down pat up until now, right? and go deeper, difficult conversations. I love that. Thank you for being even more precise, Susie, so that way that I can know which one you want me to go deeper in. Let me see, what else? Common resentment. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about effort. How many of you, I have this so much, I feel like in many of my relationships, I'm the one who primarily reaches out. Who else feels that? I love intimacy. I love friendship. And so I have really, really struggled. Well, okay, I'm exaggerating that. I have struggled with many of my relationships because I have felt in many of them that I reach out more. And so then it's a little bit like the dating game. You know, I'll do this whole thing of like, well, I reached out the last 3 times and they still haven't reached out. Like that means they don't love me. They don't care as much for me. And then I'll try to write a passive, I mean, this was in the past, but the passive aggressive, hey, is everything okay? I haven't heard from you. So if you get one of those from me, just call me on my bullshit, right? Because for so long I struggled with actually being direct and considering myself deserving of having needs, right? This is one of the big things that underlies so much of this conversation today. I am making an assumption in all the skills that I'm sharing with you that you feel like you deserve to have needs, speak up your needs, and have somebody at least agree to many of them, and you talk about their needs and listen to their needs and choose to agree to their needs, right? It becomes a beautiful conversation, but you have to begin by believing you have the right to have needs. How many of you don't? How many of us? For so many years, I did not think that I had the right to have needs in friendship. Like I thought that I was supposed to follow what the friend wanted. I was supposed to follow their needs. This is completely from my childhood and the fawn response, right? The codependency. What do you need? Let me do everything in my power to make sure your needs are met. And then I started noticing the friendships that hurt, the friendships where that didn't feel good, the friendships like, and slowly as I kept doing my work and I started being like, wait a minute, I have a right to have needs and I have a right to speak up my needs. And it's not like I have a right for all of my needs to be met, but certainly I have a right for the needs that are the, what is it called? The non-negotiable needs to be met. And if you want to be my friend and you know, you're not going to get 10 non-negotiable needs from me, but you might get 1 or 2 or 3, like it could be just 1. Hey, when you notice that you start to pull away from me, please talk to me. That might be my non-negotiable need for you if you want to be my friend, right? What are your non-negotiable needs? And do you value yourself enough to know that and then speak that? What are your non-negotiable needs? What are they? It could be 1. You have 1, 2. And so back to I want to hear, and back to the conversation, right, about expectations. One of the funny things that I discovered is I have a tendency to pick best friends. My closest best friends have very, very few other friends. Like again and again and again, I am told you are the only person that I am so close to that I can share anything with. And it's a pattern of mine. I think that I love making friends with people who might be more difficult or whatever. And so guess what? Guess what the cost of that is? They're not as oriented as I am to have intimacy, to be connected. And so I've had to have over the last couple of years, how many? I have 3 friends like that who barely ever reach out. It's always often me reaching out. And I've had to have conversations with them and do a reality check. Is you're not reaching out? Like, what does that mean to you? Do you understand that impacts me? Do you understand? Like, right? So that's another, it's not a non-negotiable. That's a negotiable for me. Like, for me, if you don't reach out a lot, help me understand why. And for the large majority of people that have actually checked it out, it's got nothing to do with whether they're thinking about me, which is how I would hurt myself when they didn't reach out to me, or whether they love me. and whether they need me, because I love to be needed as a friend. It's literally like, no, it just, whatever it is for them, it's just not part of their world to reach out, but they love it, love it, love it, and love our friendship. And so they've been a few friendships, really close ones, where I have just learned to accept these, if they're mostly women, don't reach out as often. And either I can choose to feel resentment whenever I reach out, or I can just choose to accept that that's who they are. And in fact, I want to reach out to them. I want connection to them. So why do I have to have resentment about it? So you get to decide what is the importance of the value of that, because these unmet expectations about what not just the internals of a friendship look like do you speak up when you feel triggered, when somebody hurt you, but the externals, how often do you connect? How do you connect? Who makes more efforts? Who makes less efforts? Those, do you see why this topic of friendship is so rich and complex and really teaches us to grow like almost nothing else, right? Isn't that so cool? Stay away from my husband. I guess that's one of your non-negotiables. I love it. Let me see if there's anything else. Yeah, so let's talk about breakups. Oh my goodness, it's 9:45. Okay, so we're gonna spend 5 minutes on breakups, and I already brought it up a little bit. So I think all of us have experienced friend breakups. And the question that I've got for you is, how have you allowed those breakups to impact you? Anytime we get our hearts broken, especially by a best friend or a group of friends that we thought were good friends, it really can wound us to our core. And so I don't need to go more deeply into that. My curiosity with all of us is, how have you allowed those heartbreaks to impact the way you show up in your friendships today? Will you share below? How have you allowed? Like, really, really be honest with yourself. Has it made your heart crust up a little bit? Has the scar stayed there? And every time you start getting close to somebody, there's a protective part of you that's like, don't get too close. Don't get too close. And so you learn to pull away before you actually get to go into the true intimacy that is possible in a friendship. Maybe you're the type of person that you've used heartbreak to allow you to become even more vulnerable and open, to allow you to become even more clear with your boundaries. Like, wow, that friendship broke because I wasn't taking care of myself. And I wasn't speaking up my boundary, or that person really did not have the same values as I did. So in the next relationship that I enter into or that I deepen into, because of that heartbreak or those heartbreaks, you are now clearer about who you are and what you want. So you could use it as a really positive things. No friends anymore, I run. It makes me less likely to start new friendships and make me stop sharing with my other friends. And so thank you for sharing. And my question is this what you want? This work, this methodology is all about recovering the power of choice. These lives are about opening up these topics that we all run into every day that make us either live in the green zone all the way, 8, 9, 10s, or have us living more in red or yellow zone, right? And so today it's the topic of friendships, which is in the subtopic of relationships. Okay, let me ask you this. It's a really important question I want to ask at the beginning. If you were to rate yourself on the feel-good scale about where you're at in your friendships, if I were to do a quiz right now and say, how do you rate in the quality of your friendships right now? And that includes how many friends that feel good to you, do you see them? Are they healthy? Do you feel good in them? What number would you rate? On a 1 to 10, 1 is my friendships suck. I don't have any friends. I act out old patterns. I'm really miserable in my friendships. 10 is I am surrounded by friends that love me. I feel very skillful in my capacity to have friends. My needs are met. So 9, Maureen used to keep friends as acquaintances only. Well, it would make sense, even just with the wound you talked about when you were in school, like what the freaking teacher did, D-bag. I feel protective. Like, they hurt so much, especially when our hearts are unprotected as our children. You know, these things that friends or teachers or sometimes parents in public do. 9 for Joanne, 4 Maureen, 1 Nika, 7 Carrie, 8 Cindy. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. 8 for Mary. So let's slow things down. Let's close our eyes. And what I'm going to do with our eyes closed is I want your consciousness to come up with what's the biggest takeaway that you have heard on this live. Like, what's something that's really made you say, oh, I want to focus on that more deeply? Or, yes, I didn't even know that about myself. Or, yes, this is what I'm going to do moving forward. Just ask your consciousness, what stands out? One thing that stands out. And from that one thing that stands out, is there an action that you want to take from this thing that you let yourself be impacted about today regarding friendships? Is there an action, maybe to reach out to a friend that you've had trouble with, maybe to join a community, to make more friends, maybe to look more deeply at yourself, to say, I don't know if I've ever asked myself what my values are, and to be clear about them in my friendships. I've never valued myself enough to ask that. So what's one action you commit to taking this week regarding friendships because of this live? And when you're ready, open your eyes and please share. You can share both if you have the time. Like, what was something that really impacted you today? And you can, or you can share what's an action you're going to do from that impact. So I'm going to think while you guys write that, I'm going to write what's really impacted me. Let me just think for a second. Yeah, what really impacted me was how many years I did not believe that I had the right to have needs, and so did not express my needs, and then lost friendships because they didn't meet my needs, because I didn't even realize that they had needs. So how the hell could they realize that I had needs? And then, of course, they would not meet my needs because they didn't know, and because even I didn't believe them. So I'm going to have compassion. I'm going to bring compassion to myself and to the friends that I had during those periods that maybe I'm still hurt by or angry at or disappointed at, and really bring forgiveness to myself and to them for the lack of explicit contexts that we had, and how resolved I am now for my friends to know my needs, to hear their needs, and to have deep conversations about what it is we want out of our friendship and how do we handle difficult situations, because they will show up. Nika writes, I like value. If you feel the need to pull away from me, can we have a conversation about it? Yeah, I love, that's my favorite, as I think I've made clear. Maureen, fear. I will walk right through this fear to a new neighbor who's looking for friends. Yay! Defining my non-negotiables and figuring out why they exist. Oh, Cindy, I just feel the love, the self-love when we make these kinds of decisions. And we know this, right? If we are self-loving, if that means we are the 9-10 on the feel-good scale, where green, like self-love is a 9-10, right? 8, 9, 10, it can fluctuate. How then can we not attract friendships that are a match to that? Because we can only attract friendships that are at the frequency that we are at. So it's so important. Like, what are my values? What are my non-negotiables? Can I speak them? Nika, or if I said or did something wrong, is it possible to have a conversation about it? Are you open to having a conversation about it? How can we move forward? Because I value our friendship. That is gorgeous. That is clean, right? That's clean. That's why I want to have another live on how to have difficult conversations. People have difficult conversations and they have no clue how to keep it green zone. So they do difficult conversations in the red zone, right? And then it immediately becomes fight and defense. And we're like, I don't know how to have difficult conversations. And difficult conversations don't work. Well, that's because we're not skillful. And it's really just a matter of learning new skills. So again, if you want me to go deeper into difficult conversation, hashtag go deeper difficult conversations if you want. Woo! Joanne, setting the friendship boundary if the other feels like they're pulling away. Yeah. Yeah. And then Maureen, same, I will do that as well. I'm going to finish with this. For anything good to have in our life, we have to be willing to have our hearts broken. You cannot live a fully green zone life if you're not willing to feel all the feels of a broken, hurt, wounded heart. And you've got to learn to trust that you will not only survive, but maybe even thrive from a broken heart, because broken hearts allow so much to break away, to fall apart. And sometimes the falling apart of a relationship, of a job, of our health, whatever it is, maybe more than sometimes, the falling apart is the only thing that really, truly kicks us into becoming whole, which is to heal, which means to become whole. We have to fall apart in order to possibly rebuild as someone who's not only constantly triggered by childhood stuff, by old triggers, by things we can't forgive of ourselves or others. So if you want healthy green zone friendships, you have to be willing to have your heart broken. Got it? If you protect yourself, you're going to have a protected friendship. If you're willing to be with everything, all the gifts and all the risks that a friendship, a rich, complex friendship will elicit, you've got all the, what is it called? All the ingredients for a green zone life. So let me know more about how this live impacted you and what action you're willing to take because of it this week. And let me know what topic you are interested in my covering next week. All right? Yeah, I tend to jot start new relationships to avoid pain. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, the new one and the new one and the new one, because we love the honeymoon period, right? It's why so many people stay stuck dating. The honeymoon period is freaking great. But that's not the kind of intimacy most of us really long for, because those are fleeting. Okay, everybody. See you later. I hope you enjoyed it. This was quite a bigger endeavor for me to do, and I'm really, really grateful for those of you who asked for this. And yeah, we could go vertically, more deeply into so many of these topics. So let me know which ones interest you, and have a wonderful Green Zone week.